Thumbelina. There was a good woman who longed to have a little child, but she did not know where to get one. So she went to the witch and said, "I would so like to have a little child. Tell me, what should I do to have it?" "Oh, it's not difficult," replied the witch. "I can advise you perfectly. Here you have a grain of barley, but it is not an ordinary grain that is sown in the field or fed to the chickens. Plant it carefully in a flower pot and see what will come of it." "Thank you," said the honest woman, and paid the hag 10 pennies, for that was how much the grain cost. After returning home, she carefully planted them in a flower pot, and immediately a small plant appeared, covered with beautiful leaves, and a golden purple flower grew inside. "What a beautiful flower it is," said the woman, and was so delighted that she kissed the gold and red petals. At the same moment, the flower opened with a loud noise, and inside, on the green bottom of the cup, stood a beautiful little girl. They named her Thumbelina because she was as tiny as a young bee, only much more graceful. The woman took a walnut shell to make a cradle for her baby. Violet petals served as a mattress, and a single rose petal as a blanket. At night, Thumbelina slept wonderfully, and during the day, she played on the table. The good woman placed a plate of water on the table, surrounded by a wreath of flowers, and a tulip leaf replaced the boat. 2 of the flower's stamens acted as oars, and Thumbelina swam across the plate from one bank to the other. She could also sing so beautifully that it cannot be described. One night, when Thumbelina was sleeping peacefully, a toad jumped into the room through the window. The hideous creature, heavy, fat, wet, looked at Thumbelina sleeping under a rose petal. She muttered. "A very pretty wife for my son." She took the cradle with Thumbelina, jumped out into the garden, and carried her to her muddy apartment by the stream. The toad's son, even uglier than his mother, croaked loudly. "Not so loud," the toad whispered. "We must move her to a water lily leaf in the middle of the stream." Toad placed the nutshell with Thumbelina on it on a large lily leaf that was floating on the water. When Thumbelina woke up in the morning, she found herself surrounded by water and started crying. Meanwhile, the toad was setting up a home for her deep in the mud. The little fish who heard Thumbelina's cries decided to help her. They gathered around the lily stalk and bit through it with their sharp teeth. The leaf floated downstream, carrying Thumbelina far away from the toad. Thumbelina enjoyed the journey, passing villages, towns, meadows, fields, and forests. A gorgeous white butterfly landed on the leaf, and Thumbelina tied it with her belt so that they could float together. Suddenly, a beetle snatched Thumbelina from the leaf and carried her up a tree. He brought her honey from flowers and told her that she was pretty, although she did not resemble a beetle. The other beetles came to see her but started saying she was ugly. The host of the beetles carried her to the meadow so that the neighbors would not laugh at his taste. All summer, Thumbelina lived in the forest, made a bed out of grass and ate flower juice. When winter came, Thumbelina found herself alone, cold and hungry. She reached the dwelling of a field mouse, which took her into its warm burrow. The field mouse offered her to stay for the winter in exchange for keeping order and telling stories. One day, the mouse announced the visit of a rich mole who was their neighbor. The mole appeared in a velvet fur coat, and Thumbelina sang songs for him. The mole invited them to walk along the new corridor where there was a dead bird. Thumbelina felt very sorry for the poor swallow who was lying frozen in the ground. At night, she wove a warm rug out of hay and wrapped the swallow in it. The swallow turned out to be alive, although very weak. Thumbelina brought her water and began to nurse her. The swallow told how she had injured her wing and could not fly away to warm countries. Thumbelina cared for her all winter, sharing what she had. In spring, the swallow regained its strength and offered Thumbelina a flight together to warm countries. Thumbelina refused, unwilling to leave the field mouse. The mole asked Thumbelina to marry him, and the field mouse persuaded her to do it. Thumbelina didn't want to marry a mole who didn't like sunshine and flowers. On the wedding day, when she was supposed to go down to earth, Thumbelina said goodbye to the sun. The swallow appeared again and asked if he would fly with her now. Thumbelina jumped on her back, and they both flew away to warm countries. They flew through mountains and forests until they reached a beautiful, flowering valley. The swallow sat Thumbelina on a large flower where the elf king lived. The king fell in love with Thumbelina and proposed marriage to her. Thumbelina agreed, and the elven king gave her little wings so she could fly. The swallow told her that she would now be the happiest in the world. Thumbelina became the queen of elves and lived among flowers. The swallow returned to Denmark, where she told the story to the writer who wrote it down. See you next time.